Hey, fifth graders. So we're going to take a look at how to multiply whole numbers by fractions. And that sounds kind of scary at first, but I'm going to introduce you to this idea that makes it a lot easier on our brains in terms of thinking what that means, and also a better way to model it before we jump into the algorithm part. So we look at fractions as a part of a whole, and you've talked about this with your teacher by now, and you know that on a fraction, the bottom number is the denominator, and it's always going to tell us how many parts make up the whole. Okay, now when we're looking at multiplying whole numbers times our fractions, it can look like this, but that's kind of scary because we don't really know how to do this part yet. We've never seen it in this capacity. We don't know how to line it up correctly, and so it looks a little intimidating to us. And so what we're going to do is, in math, the word of in this capacity also means multiplied by. These are the same things. They're saying the same things, but they look different. We're making it look a little easier on our brain. So when you've been looking at fractions, you've been looking at it as 1/6 or 6 parts make up a whole, and we have one piece. But what if the whole was a whole number, and we had a whole bunch of these whole numbers that we were trying to find a fraction of? So think about it this way. If we have 24 cubes, okay, 24 whole numbers, 24 whole cubes makes up our whole piece that we're looking at. And we want to break it into 6 even parts because we're going to take 1/6 of that. Okay, we're going to take these pieces and break them into 6 equal sized pieces. Again, because the denominator says how many pieces make up this portion. So looking at this, I see a pretty clear way to break up 24 into 6 parts. And what I'm going to do is break them apart into 6 equal pieces. Okay, and what we end up with is 6 groups of 4. And we're looking at one group. So we're going to look at how many whole cubes are in this one group. So here's one group. So in this case, there are 4 cubes in this one group. So 1/6 of 24 is the same thing as saying 4 cubes. Now, a lot of kids want to put it as a fraction and say, oh, it's 4/24 or 4/6. But what we're doing is we're looking at the total number of cubes. And if we had 4/6, that's not even one whole cube, is it? And if we had 4/24, that's even less than one whole of a cube. So when we're looking at a whole number and we're taking a portion of that, we're going to break them into these whole groups. So it's a whole cube that we're looking at instead. Now, if I were to say 4/6 of 24, I've already broken these down into groups, 6 groups. So I'm going to say how many chunks of this would show me 4/6. So here's 1/6, here would be 2/6, here's 3/6, and here's 4/6. So in this case, 4/6 of 24 equals 16 whole cubes. So let's practice this with a couple examples here. Here I have 12 cubes. And I want to know what 1/4 of 12 is. And I actually realized I have too many cubes here. So now I have 12 cubes. So I'm looking at this, I'm trying to decide how can I break these 12 cubes into 4 equal groups, because that tells us how many parts we have. So I'm going to break it this way. And I notice that I now have 4 equal pieces, 4 equal chunks of cubes, and each chunk has 3. So with this one chunk, there are 3 whole cubes in there. So 1/4 of 12 equals 3. If I broke this down and I wanted to know what 1/6 of 12 is, I again would want to look at, here are my 12 cubes, and I have to figure out a way to break them in to 6 equal groups. So if I break it into 3s first, I'd have 4 in each group, and I see that I could break those again. So now I have 6 equal groups made out of my original 12 blocks, and each group has 2 cubes in it. So for this particular fraction, 1/6 of the whole number 12 is the same as saying 2 cubes. I know what you're saying, Mr. Pierce, it's not always going to be 1/6, 1/4, 1/5. So what happens if there's multiple 6 or 12ths or 4ths in there? So if I were to say look for 3/6 of 12, I'm not going to count just one group. I still have my even groups, but I'm going to count 3 of these groups. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces in there. So 3/6 of 12 equals 6. Okay, our last example. And you're going to solve this on your own. Is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 by 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks. So we're looking at 40 pieces here. And I want to know 3/8 of 40 would be. So you would break these down into 8 equal groups. 8 pieces would make up our whole group of 40. And then you're going to count how many cubes you have. So get out those Omnifix cubes, and let's see if you can figure this out.